The title of my presentation is Write Your Resume Like You Mean It. And you may think, why would I not mean what I put on my resume? But a lot of times a resume is an afterthought for a job seeker or for someone who's looking to change careers. They don't see it as being representative of who they are, not only as a professional, but as a person. Oftentimes it's a chore. Instead, it's a task that has to be completed instead of something that they really put their whole heart and soul into. So that's why I came up with this, write your resume like you mean it. And you want your resume to show that you really meant, that you took time and effort and invested it in your resume. So the other portion of my presentation is the power of action verbs. So from my experience, action verbs are the silent partner to keywords. I just finished reading a book about resume writing where it was 20 to 30 pages on keywords and one paragraph on action verbs. But without action verbs, keywords would have no meaning. So think of it like going to the doctor. Okay, the doctor saves your life, but the nurse keeps you alive. Keywords, but they're both important. They are equally important. That's an excellent point. So the keywords get you in front of the interviewers. The action verb helps you stay there. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So let's try and find out a little bit more of what's going on here. All right.
So keywords get you in front of the person, and the action verbs keep you there. Is that what
you got? Grab and hold. Grab and hold. Grab and hold the reader's attention. So what we're looking at today is, what is an action verb? So typically an action verb kind of sets the stage for a presentation of impact and results. They help answer the question when someone is going through your resume and reading it, they help answer the question, so what? So if you tell someone, I did this, I did such and such, without the impact and results, without the introduction of an action verb, they're going to say, well, so what? 100 other people that I'm looking at their resumes have done the same thing. So action verbs set the stage. They help answer the question, so what? They describe who you are, what you do, when you did it, where, and why. Action verbs present you as the doer, the owner of what it is that you're trying to convey in your resume and your accomplishment statements. We're going to talk about where do I find action verbs. Taking ownership and credit. How do I choose the right action verbs for me? We all have favorite words. So which one are your favorite words, Jeffrey?
Within the context of a resume?
Well, as a finance person, since this first step is keywords, as a finance person, what would be a related action verb?
For me, it's showing that we impacted a decision, right? My group and me. So I would say that we influenced a significant decision.
Okay, or resolved an issue?
Or
resolved an issue, something like that. How about yourself? What's an important action verb? Disruptor? I like that. It's different. Connector? All right, that's great. So why the emphasis on action verbs? Because it engages the reader. And on a resume, when you're applying for a position, for whatever use you have of the resume, not only engages the reader, it helps them visualize you in the job. It gives a mindset, a framework. So action verbs help you say it like you mean it. As I just said, action verbs convey your resume mindset and attitude. So why is attitude important?
I've interviewed so many people over the years, and I've also thought about my own process, and you want to show interest and energy and awareness. Why am I here talking with you about this job? I want to come across that I've done some research. I want to be a part of your company, and here's why, and here's what I can do for you. Okay, so what you're describing there is an in-person interview. So the key words and the action verbs, what they do to partner you to get together is to get you to that interview. Right, but wouldn't that be the same idea, though? I mean, that I want to come across that, I thought about this. I might have tailored my resume to this particular situation. I'm missing the point, I know.
No, well, you want to have the action verbs. Yes, you want to be able to state those in the context of the interview, but you want those action verbs on your resume.
Right.
So in partnership with keywords, they get you the interview.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Of course, right.
Okay, all right. So, and also what action verbs do in presenting you as the doer with a positive attitude, it tells the reader that you are serious about the job. The job, not any job, the job.
Yeah.
So that's key. You want the reader to know that you are interested in this particular job to which you are applying, and that you are interested in the company in which you would work.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say, so help me understand how we get there, right? In a resume.
Okay, so if I'm understanding what you're stating is the action verbs. All right, well, I'm going to have some samples up here in a couple of slides.
Okay.
So let me finish this and we'll jump ahead to the samples. Does that make sense? And then maybe you can visualize better what I'm talking about. The other thing too, what action verbs in connection with keywords help is that you focus on your value. Your value, as like you were just describing, you resolved. You are a resolver. You are a person that is a conduit for conflict resolution. That's the value. Action verbs help you focus your resume on your value to that specific job and that particular company to which you're applying. Does that make sense? Okay. It doesn't talk about your shortcomings or limitations. They'll learn that when they hire you.
That's true.
So,
You know, maybe you're going to get to this, but
Okay.
One of my questions is, if I'm somebody who has stepped out of the workplace for quite a while for pay, and I understand that there are algorithms, there's programs, and human resources departments use them now when they're searching through resumes, and that there are certain words that can date you and that should be avoided, certain new words that are in our lexicon that I may not be familiar with because I haven't been out in the market for a while. Do you have a compilation of those words that you don't want to use because you'd be dating yourself if you did?
well, words are ageless. I mean, there are certain words have, I don't see words as, the words in each individual word as having a time frame or usage. They're colloquial terms. So what falls in and out of favor for usage are colloquial terms, not necessarily your standard verbs.
Well, here's an example. You know, thinking outside the box. Apparently, you don't want to say anything like that now on your resume because it dates you.
Well, I wouldn't recommend putting thinking outside the box on a resume anyway.
Okay, but I just came up with one example.
Okay, no, that's fine.
I mean, I'm just, maybe that wasn't a good example.
Well, that's why I say choose the verbs that work for you. And I think that there are certain words that are ageless and others that are colloquial terms that do have a lifespan. So each generation of writers well, look at the difference between us baby boomers and millennials. We have a totally different way of speaking.
Well, that's exactly my point. And if
So-
you're sending a resume into a department that is run by a 30-something-year-old millennial, Gen X, whatever, you want to make sure that you're not putting anything in your resume in writing that they put you in a pile B before they've even started looking at what. That's what I'm getting.
Okay, but I think what you're referring to are, and I have a list of favorite verbs and how to look for them. I think what you're referring to are colloquial terms versus standard verbs. If you are working with action verbs in concert with keywords, they are specific to a particular job.
Okay.
And so that person, no matter what their age or generation, they are hiring for that specific job. And those keywords and those action verbs relate to the job. Does that make sense?
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, I understand what the word keyword is. I'm asking for specifics. So at some point, you're going to get to the point where you'll show us a slide.
Well, I think that the specifics are related to who you are, what you do, and where you want to do it. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, action verbs in concert with keywords support your personal branding statement, your summary, and your tagline. So your personal branding statement is the section of your resume where you introduce yourself in 2 or 3 sentences. It's your paragraph, and the tagline is the one sentence that is an encapsulation of who you are and what your skill sets are. This here, tagline and marketing tool. Remember, your resume is your marketing tool, and the tools that you have to use are your personal branding statement, which includes your summary and your tagline. Now, this is a whole different presentation right in here. So today we're talking about action verbs. You can do a whole hour on your personal branding statement, your summary, plus your tagline as your marketing tool. So it depends on how you format your resume, how you do the presentation, but what you want included in each one of those are the action verbs. Now, here's the tricky part. When you're writing your resume, you're choosing your action verbs. You don't want to be shy, but you don't want to be too boastful. So you want to take ownership for what you do, but you want to do it in the context of how you function in your job in which you were a success and within the organization in which you worked. You don't want to make it sound like you are the end-all and be-all of that particular accomplishment or that particular endeavor. There's a fine line. But you don't want to be shy, and you don't want to give credit to other people on your resume, and you don't want to give credit to the company. Your resume is your marketing tool. It doesn't belong to anybody else. You own it. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. And here we go. Okay. The purpose of action verbs. This is my favorite line. I'm always telling my clients and candidates that I work with, you want to be clear, concise, and to the point. Get rid of the fluff. You want to state what you did, how you did it, and the impact and results. Action verbs help you get there by just stating the action in the first part of the sentence. Action verbs grab and hold the reader's attention. The keywords, as we just talked about, the keywords get you through the applicant tracking systems. The action verbs grab and hold the reader's attention. The difference is you're going through a mechanical process, and somewhere along the line, a human being's going to read your resume, and that's where the action verbs come in handy. They begin your accomplishment statements. They reflect, as we've talked before, about ownership, the job ownership, and your commitment to the job. Now, do I sound really passionate about this? Absolutely. Because I've been reading resumes and writing resumes for I'm not going to say how long, for a long time. So I've worked in both HR and I've helped people write resumes. So it is really important to show your commitment. This is where the title of this presentation came from. Write your resume like you mean it. Write your resume like you are committed to what you do. You take ownership for what you do. So your resume focuses on results, and action verbs are a key way to get there. It speaks to your values, it shows your professionalism, and they propel your career forward. That's the purpose of a resume, not only to get you a job, but to help you move your career forward. Questions?
I'm still fixated on the thing you said in the previous slide about don't be shy, but don't boast. So could you give a couple of examples? And I don't care what industry.
Sure. Why don't we, let me skip ahead to samples, because I think that's...
Wait if you're going to get
Oh, no, that's okay. We can come back.
I run into that problem all the time.
All right, here you go. Ownership. So this is a sample from an actual resume that I worked on. The statement that they had collaborated with architects and engineers to develop major construction projects. So who did the writer of this resume give credit to?
Architects and engineers.
Right. It's your resume. What did you do? You developed major construction projects in collaboration with architects and engineers. So what's the first thing the reader's going to see? So the reader's going to look at the sentence and they're going to see collaborated. And then how often, you talk about words, how often do you see that word collaborated on resumes? 10 times in one resume on average. Everybody collaborates. That's great, but I want to know what you can do. I developed. So just remember that I'm going to skip down here. So your resume is not an advertisement for companies. So often people will put on their resume, this is what my company did, this is how much money they made, but they fired you, so why would you care? So just remember, your resume is about you. It's not about the people you worked with, and it's not about the company you worked for. If you worked for Cisco and you're applying for a job in Silicon Valley, you don't need to tell the reader what Cisco does. Any of the larger name companies. Take credit for what you did and save the, don't give them free advertising on your resume. Now, accomplishment support phrasing in partnership with, instead of in collaboration with, by supporting, as key contributor, as member of. So you can start with your action verbs, and then you can do some accomplishment support phrasing in the sentence. I'm still getting to what you talked about. So this is not being shy, and it's not overly boastful. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Now I think I got some more samples in here. All right, we'll go back through these. Hello, okay, now you asked about verbs. Okay, as you use words, now I'm a word person. I'm not a numbers person. I'm terrible with numbers, but I love words. So as I go through my writing and life and whatnot, I pick up favorite words. Synchronize is one of my favorite words. So coordinate. It's one of those overused words. And you were asking about how do I know what words not to use. LinkedIn comes out every year with the most overused verbs on LinkedIn profiles. That's a good resource for you.
And where is that resource?
LinkedIn.
It's in LinkedIn.
Just do a search.
Yeah, just do a so I have so just do a search. LinkedIn's overused words for 2016. They come out every year. What they do is they scan the profiles and they look for the most overused words. Create is one of them. Never use create once on your resume, and then pick up a thesaurus and look up some alternates. So synchronized. Manage is another used word. Everybody manages. Think of something else. Pilot or spearheaded. Lead. Everybody leads. Actually, I'm on the fence about shepherd. Well, I'm kind of on a fence about it, but I put it in there. And then drive or propel, collaborate, partner, improve, advanced or furthered. I love this word, furthered. Provide, deliver, ready, increase. Oh, now you want a good finance word? Sales and finance, marketing, boost is a good one. Rocketed. Rocketed's a little on the. If you want an industry-specific verb, rocketed might be one of them, because the high-tech folks would love this word. Would IBM love it? Probably not so much. They'd probably go like boost better. So you'd also want to think about the company and your audience. You want to take into consideration your audience if you want to be selectful in the type of wording that you use. I love this word. Created, originated. Lessened, minimized, here's another good one. So this is all from a thesaurus, and you play with them. Now, I put this on here because one of my pet peeves is people, and LinkedIn has this too, they have a volunteer section. I hate that word volunteer. I like pro bono. Number one, it's more professional, and that's what it means. It means for the public good. So, and then on your resume, instead of putting volunteer experience, put community service, because it has a totally different connotation. A lot of recruiters, a lot of HR people, if you didn't get paid for what you did, they may get that discounted. But if you put community service on there, it has a whole different take to it. It's like, I'm engaged in the community, especially if you're applying for a company. Right. I'm trying to think what high-tech company actually pays for sabbaticals. There are companies in Silicon Valley, I think Apple? Intel? Okay, Intel, it's where they pay their employees for a year off. They pay their salary for a year. They take it off and they do sabbaticals. They love this stuff. They like community service. They like the pro bono. So when you're putting your resume together, try to remember, and this is words, I did pro bono work, and I did it within the context of community service instead of volunteer work. So, and then I found a few more words here. I love captured. It's one of my favorite words. Orchestrated, initiated. Netted sound like you may be fishing, but it's it's a little different word. Devised is a good word, and pioneered. Pioneered's a great word, especially if you're an executive. I pioneered. I orchestrated. All right, let me see if I can find some. We were going to look at samples here, and I got sidetracked. Sorry about that. Oh, sorry. Thesaurus is not a dinosaur. It is a resource for words. Oops, sorry, I went the wrong way. Sample. Okay, here we go. Here's some samples. Now, this particular person started with an action verb. We're going the right direction, but what was it that initiated? What was the initial action? What was the first action? Which was the most important one? Which is the result? The executed fab-wide business process and software deployment solutions by developing cross-functional project plans and coordinating multinational teams. You see the difference? This one has much more power. This was the end result. So what we did was, you remember a long time ago in grammar school you did diagramming of sentences? Does anybody remember that? Yes. Okay, so what you do is, that's how I do my resumes, is I look at them from that perspective of, third, fourth grade grammar school, diagramming which was the most important action. So this is the most important action, you want to lead with it. And then look at that great word. That's a great word. Somebody's reading through your resume, they see executed. That's a great word.
Is fab-wide, is that a technical term? Or is that doesn't seriously mean fabulous wide?
No. That fab's in manufacturing, they have a fab. Okay. But I just, I don't mess with what their expertise is, the content. I'm looking at the words, so that's where I'm coming from on that one. But the fab is an actual, it's a physical compartment in a manufacturing plant.
Is it short for fabrication?
Might be, but there are also looking business process. I don't know, fabrication-wide business process, that doesn't. But I didn't.
I just wanted to confirm.
That's okay. I didn't, I don't mess with the expertise. I just, play with the words.
So what would push this over into bragging? This isn't bragging, just confident and clear. What pushes it over into bragging?
Let's see. Something like solely or executed. So I would say that if someone were bragging, they wouldn't give credit to the multinational teams. They would probably end the sentence right there. And then the other thing would to make it sound solely executed, which I wouldn't put the solely the adjective in front of there anyway. But I would say probably they would be the type of person that wouldn't involve any type of engagement with other teams within the organization.
And take full credit.
And take full credit. But they, this is, they need to share that credit. So there's the difference. They're taking ownership for the action, and at the same time they're sharing the credit. They're showing that they can work cross-functionally. Oh, come on, what am I doing here? Oh, I'm so sorry. There we go. Now again, so this one's a lot easier to see. Work with production. So what they did was they optimized plant schedule and manufacturing capabilities by working with production. Now, here's another talk about resumes, when to capitalize and when not to. So this is the name of a department. I tend to capitalize those. A lot of people don't. So, but here you have optimized. Optimized plant schedule. Here you go, participated in projects. That sounds like they just were, part of a team, but they guaranteed, here's another great word, guaranteed communications and facilitated supply chain monitoring as key project and plan meeting participant. The other thing too is we've got them involved in a meeting as a participant, but we've key. In other words, the meeting couldn't have taken place without them. Now you want to do that as if it's true, but if that person's, even if we're looking at a senior level management executive, obviously they're going to be key. Any more questions? Nope, there's more samples. All right, now, here's a long one. And we got 2 challenges here, is to edit it down. And then we've got this person wrote in first person, which you don't want to do on your resume. So it ended up being guarantee compliance with service level agreement parameters by auditing teamwork and using Excel to generate production reports. So what we're doing is, resumes are not a narrative. We're working on that, but we're also getting that keyword up front. How are we doing so far? Am I answering your questions kind of with the samples? Okay. And let's see if I got more.
You said you don't want the resume to be in first person?
No. Get those eyes off of there.
Use them, save them for LinkedIn.
Right, absolutely.
Okay, because I was just thinking, isn't that what you, yeah, okay.
So get the eye. Now, just a note after that last sample, you want to tailor your resume to the lowest common denominator, not to minimize the work of any particular person in the selection process. But what you want to consider is who's going to read your resume. Now, there's two ways to apply for a position. I mean, you go through the process, the applicant tracking system. It's going to get read by a human being somewhere along the line, but you're following the regular process. Then there is the internal referral, where you bypass this process, or it's become secondary, and you're working directly with people that are hiring you. So you're actually going to have 2 different types of resumes. So if you are going to have, if you're a technical person, a finance person, I'm sorry, I don't know what your background is. Marketing? Okay, absolutely. Marketing is highly specialized. It's those are the toughest resumes to write, are marketing resumes, because you have to be both creative and you have to give results, quantitative results. So when you are meeting one-on-one with a hiring manager and you have arranged an informational interview, you tailor your resume to that person's level of expertise. When you're applying with the rest of the crowd, you're going through the applicant tracking systems, you don't know who's going to read your resume eventually. And in a large company, by the time it gets to a recruiter who specializes in your field, it's gone through the applicant tracking system, it's probably gone through a sourcer, and it's probably gone through a screener. You don't know who the sourcer is, you don't know who the screener is. You want that person to be able to understand your resume. So there are layers. Larger companies have layers. Correct me if I'm wrong, Christine.
I get that, but are you suggesting that your resume evolves as you go through the process?
Well, it depends. I mean, we talked about this earlier. You want to have a professional statement of your accomplishments when you have an informational interview. What I'm saying is for general applications, you want to tailor your resume to the lowest common denominator. So I run into this all the time. People don't want to spell out acronyms. They say, well, this is common vernacular in the industry. You cannot make that assumption. You have to figure out that the person who's reading your resume is a new grad with a bachelor's degree in human resources in their first job in the first month. They don't know what SLA means. If they were born and raised in the 60s, they think of Patty Hearst. So, now I'm dating myself.
Sorry, you are. I have a question about, you referenced applicant tracking system. Are you talking about an online tracking HR system? So give me some names. I want to do a little bit of research on what those what the current ones are now.
Help me, Christine.
I just searched ATS. I mean, there's like about 35.
And then also the degree of intensity of those applicant tracking systems depends on the budget of the company. I mean, if you're applying to a small company, they don't have an applicant tracking system for the most part.
Well, we're seeing a lot of cloud-based, and it's very inexpensive now.
Okay.
Well, what I was getting at is, if there's probably hundreds of them, but aren't there like some of the top companies in Silicon Valley are using probably maybe 3 or 4 of the top ones? I was just wondering what they are now. And
Resumex, IX, JobBite.
VIT.
Resumex is kind of the biggest one.
RESUMIX.
IX.
Because I'm guessing they would throw certain things out, or
Your resume is what they throw out.
Well,
No, seriously. They
well,
are
I
they
get
are
that.
programmed.
That's what I'm getting
Okay.
at. Is that you want to? I'm guessing there are some algorithms inside these things.
Well, for each job, so there's a recruiter, right? They're given a job requisition. For each job, they program the applicant tracking system for keywords. So the applicant tracking system prioritizes resumes that come in based on the quantity of keywords in the resume that match the job. So when resumes go through an applicant tracking system, they actually go into the inbox of a recruiter. So and they go by job number. So in that email inbox comes these resumes based on the job number, and they're usually prioritized by how well they fit the keywords. That's it. That's pretty much it. That's why keywords are so important, is because you want to get through that first layer. Then the recruiter will open up some of those emails and read the resume in the 3 to 5 seconds, and that's where the action verbs come in. Does that make sense? Okay, so here's the last sample. So you can see partnered, now that's a good action verb. Partnered with nationally known publisher on public relations strategies that result in an author's placement. So what the difference here is, the result is the achieved author placement on online bestseller lists by partnering with nationally known publisher on public relations strategies. Now we had to kind of change the tone of the sentence because the person whose resume this is what they did. They achieved the author placement. So the difference here is we've started with what she didn't own, and then also it's not clear that she's the one that achieved that author placement. So we kind of inverted the sentence and started with an action verb.
Because if she says partner, which was the top statement, you don't know if the person she partnered with is the one that resulted in the author's placement, whereas the
Right.
second one.
Gives her ownership. Okay. All right. All right. So do the samples help to answer some of the questions you've had?
I think they're illustrating the point you're trying to make about really demonstrating what we've achieved, right?
Okay.
And the impact we've had, right?
Okay. All right. So let me backtrack a little bit because we jumped ahead for the samples. So what exactly is an action verb? It has energy, power, and punch. Okay? Action verbs lead the keywords. So if you just have keywords on your resume, it doesn't have a focus. It doesn't talk about impact and results. So the action verbs help lead keywords to convey your skills plus your accomplishment plus ownership. They give meaning to the keywords. You become a doer versus a receiver. The action verbs help to shape your resume, heart, and essence. Any questions so far? Any more questions? No? Okay. Okay, now here we're talking about the keywords. There's applicant tracking systems and keyword scanners. So I think we've talked a lot about this, and then action verbs are, by the time they're looking at the action verbs, you've got a human being. Now remember, human beings have limited attention spans, which is why you want to have those action verbs to grab and hold their attention. And it goes through these different stages of resume review. Start out as 3 to 5 seconds. Action verbs are going to help you grab the person who's reading your resume, going to help you capture their attention and keep it. That's the important thing. All right, keywords are a key, and let's talk a little bit about where you find them. Keywords are crucial to your success. They are buzzwords. Now, you were asking about terminology, the colloquial terms, what's common, what's not common. So every industry, you're a marketing person, so there's buzzwords in marketing that they're related to your industry. You're a finance person. There are specific buzzwords that are important in your industry. So those are keywords. And where do you find keywords? Not only on job postings, but where else? Right here we've got conferences, presentation titles. I mean, you can find keywords here today, and people that you meet. in their presentations, in their bios, whatever. The other thing too, a lot of people don't look our company websites and industry associations. Does that make sense? Okay, all right. All right. So action verbs, what they do is they try to engage your audience in your successes. So what you want the person who's reading your resume to do is not only just to be reading it, you want them to become a participant in what you've done. You want them to be able to feel how you felt when you made these accomplishments, how you triumphed, how you overcame challenges, and you want them to become a participant in that. It also, action verbs help in insight into your professional personality. Are you confident? Are you going to be competitive? And are you professional? Okay, here's another couple of samples for you. This one is provided high spend advertisers with consulting services, vertical and competitive intelligence, marketing strategy to create a positive impact and maximize profits. So here, what we did was this is the result. So we maximized profits and cultivated positive impact by providing high-profile advertisers with consulting services, vertical and competitive intelligence, and marketing strategies. Does that make sense? Okay.
Can I ask a question about that? I mean,
Sure.
I read that, and I like what you did to maximize profits. This is really what you want to focus on. But what is cultivated positive impact?
Well, I took this word out. Create.
I mean, I'm just looking at it thinking, what does cultivate positive impact mean?
Well, remember what I'm doing here is I'm taking, cultivated positive impact would be,
I don't mean to nitpick, but I'm just curious. That seems vague.
well, it depends on here's how they cultivated by providing high-profile advertisers with consulting services. So maximize profits and cultivated positive impact. What we've done is defined how both of those actions took place by providing high-profile advertisers with consulting, vertical intelligence, and marketing strategies.
Yeah,
Maybe it's the word that's bothering you. So I don't like create.
right.
I don't like create, so I came up with, I tried cultivated.
Yeah.
If you maybe a different word, so there you go. Action verbs are personal.
I think what he's saying is it's an empty phrase to you.
It is, yeah. But I think the main point I'm getting from this is that by restructuring that, say, look, I maximize profits, and regardless of whether
That's the more important.
Yeah,
You can take that out.
Cultivate a positive impact, but by doing this, and this, I like that.
Well,
It makes sense.
the other thing too is you could take this out.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Could you also change the word cultivated to generated? Would that
Absolutely.
that would be more of an accelerant type of energy around it.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. I like cultivated because I'm an employee engagement type of person. So there again, the types of words that you select, they reflect who you are as a person. So that's why having these action verbs be verbs that you use and that that you're comfortable with, and they reflect your personality. So if I were to submit this resume to someone who really wasn't into employee engagement, they might say, I really don't care about this stuff, okay? If this word were generated and that person liked that verb a lot better, I mean, that's where the words come in where they're important.
Marcia, where I'm going with this is I'm so used to having people say, okay, well, what was that impact, right? Like, I increased profit, or our project resulted in a profit improvement of 35% in 2016. Right?
Well, the other thing you can do too is you could split this into two accomplishments, depending on if you really wanted to talk about cultivated a positive impact, you can create a separate accomplishment statement. It depends on the person and what it is they're trying to convey. It also depends on if you have a resume where you've got 10 accomplishments under one job, that's too many. So what you're doing is trying to edit it down to 6 or 7 bullets and short, This one's actually a little long. So then you're looking at either combining or deleting some of them. So that's something you look at when you're looking at the whole resume. If you're looking at each job, is how many accomplishments have I got with supporting one role? And the other thing too is you want to emphasize the more recent roles as opposed to those that were 15 years ago. Yes.
So it was a good idea to say a professional, a finance person, that they should have a mix of the numbers, the hard-driven numbers, with a little bit of the people side, because sometimes they're strong on numbers, not so strong on building teams or stopping people from leaving, and other people who do much more soft skill stuff, that they should make sure that they include some hard numbers.
Oh, metrics, absolutely. You want metrics on your resume.
But
Yeah,
you also want some people side, I would think.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Not that you don't have people side, but.
I think especially, I've had this discussion with executives that are candidates that I've actually lost this argument a couple of times, is that they need to, executives, especially in Silicon Valley, need to show some kind of employee engagement and support and leadership. Leadership in Silicon Valley is about engaging employees. So no, absolutely, you want to have that, both.
So I need the metrics and the people work.
For a finance person like Jeff, you want to talk about how much money you made and how much money you saved and how you did it. Okay, here's another sample. Now, this person started their first statement out with used, I like utilize better. Utilized clinical setting techniques and brought value to influence customer thinking about ways that can provide treatment and manage patients. Enhanced product value and persuaded. Now, I would have put influenced in here instead of persuaded. Customer decision making by presenting alternatives to providing treatment and managing patients that utilize clinical selling techniques. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. I think I'm running out of time. But, okay, now, one thing about action verbs is avoid repetition. Consistency is not redundancy. You want to be consistent and have a resume theme, and you want your action verbs to support that. But redundancy is not consistency. So you don't want to repeat the same word all the time. Even though you have favorite words, you don't want it in every other sentence. A lot of people love the word create. I hate it. So you want to be sure and use a thesaurus. You want to have the theme. You want to have a variety in words. You want to have impact. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. All right. Now, this is another one of my least favorite words. People always have successfully on their resume. So what does success imply? If you have a resume full of sentences and you've got success on one of those sentences,
That means the other things were failures.
right, absolutely. That means you failed. Now, we all know in order to be a success, you have to fail. We have all failed, haven't we? Some of us more than others. All right. So if you have successfully starting in front of an action verb, it implies that when it came to other tasks, you failed. So take it off. Get rid of that word successfully. It's one of my pet peeves. I lose that battle a lot too. All right, so avoiding the fluff. Contributed significantly to. Just come right out and say what you did. Consistently met. You don't need consistently, just say met. Expertly managed. You don't need expertly. I mean, it is assumed if you are applying for a vice president or a CEO job that you are an expert at something. So you don't need to have expertly. Actually, if you are applying for a barista job at Starbucks and you make some pretty good lattes, you don't need to tell somebody you're an expert at it. You need to show it. And your resume shows it by the actions that you've done. So it doesn't matter what you do at life. If you've done it consistently and you are an expert at it, you still don't need to tell them that. Chosen to supervise, just supervised. Now, another thing I run into a lot on resumes is people like to put promoted. I was promoted to. You show that on your resume by your job chronology. You don't need to say I was promoted to. they can figure it out. I mean, they can figure it out by looking at your resume. Trusted to train. It's kind of, this is alliteration. I love alliteration, but just get to the point and say train. Recognize for ability to, just tell them what you know how to do. And responsible for is another overused phrase on a resume. Just tell them what you did. Does that make sense? Okay, all right. All right, now here are some suggestions to help you with your action verbs. You want to keep an accomplishments diary. It can be a daily journal, a weekly journal. Is when you're in a job, any job, even if you're really happy in your job, you want to keep an accomplishments diary, because if something happens and you have to go back and write your resume, you're going to forget a lot of things that you've done. And then you go to an interview, oh, I forgot. So what you want to do is keep a daily journal of your key accomplishments. That becomes a reference for future resumes. It also helps you remember why this was important. It also gives value. What value did you bring to your employer? What were your actions? How did it turn out? These are all, try and keep all of these in your accomplishments diary. What were the results? Answer that question, so what? What were the solutions and any value added benefits? Any questions? No? Okay, all right. Okay, now the other thing too is you want to inspire your audience. You want the reader to call you. Just as like Sandra was talking about, you want your call to action. Your resume is your call to action. You want your reader to pick up the phone to call you. You want them to envision you in the job to which you're applying. Use distinctive wording. Another thing to avoid templates. Avoid using templates. The reason is that if there is a job advertised and there's 100 people applying and 50 of those people used a template, then they're going to get 50 of the same resumes. So avoid using templates. Guidelines, absolutely. Follow guidelines. Follow any kind of outlines, but those online templates, absolutely avoid those. Eliminate unnecessary words and phrases. Write with value, meaning, and power. Okay, so these are some questions that I give to my candidates, to my clients, to help them come up with their accomplishments and action verbs. So action verbs, keywords, those help you put together your accomplishments. So what accomplishments are you most proud of? What single project and task is the most significant accomplishment in your career? How do you own this? We're talking about ownership. This is where your action verbs come in. How do you own it? Was the idea adopted by others? How do others benefit from your special skills? What challenges did you overcome? What were the results? And what do you offer a new employer? Does anyone have any questions? Nope? Okay, all right. Almost finished.
One of my favorite phrases on a resume was averted disaster by. And he went on to explain how he found a glitch in the software that had already been printed on CDs and was ready to be shipped out.
Wow.
It was, it had a huge impact, on the company, but it was great. I mean, it was a great thing for the company. So I love that. Averted disaster by.
That's a great phrase.
Yeah.
So recommendations, do what is best for you, for your resume. Remember, it is your resume. If you put 10 resume writers in a room and ask their opinion, you're going to get 20 opinions. So it's your resume. Absolutely research, talk to different people, find as many resources as you can, but it is ultimately your resume. It reflects your personality, who you are, what you bring to the table. Everything else is input and feedback. Resume value, it's career, life, and death. That sounds a little strong, but it makes a real difference in, for example, I have folks contact me all the time saying, well, I want my resume tweaked. And I look at their resume and I'm like, you need a complete overhaul. No, I really just want it tweaked. I'm getting phone calls from this resume. Okay, so you're getting phone calls from where? So remember, your resume, you may be getting, it's not just about getting any response, you want the response. You want to hear from the companies that are going to compensate you for your value. So your resume is the conduit to get that. If you have a mediocre resume, you're going to get called about mediocre jobs. If you have an outstanding resume, you're going to get called about top-notch jobs. And we talked about this before. You know that doctor-nurse thing. The doctor saves your life, the nurse keeps you alive. So your resume is as pivotal to your career as your doctor and nurse are to your health. And okay, so we have our quote: "The achievement of your goal is assured the moment you commit yourself to it." So you want to make a commitment to get those action verbs on your resume. You want to show that you're committed to the job. Okay, so I have, oops, going the wrong direction again. Sorry about that. All right, so here's my contact information. If you're interested in getting an action verb checklist, call it Action Verb 911. If you want to send me your resume, I can do a quick analysis of it for action verbs. So there's my email address, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And there's my website. I'm on Google+, and there's my Twitter. So any final questions? Yes?
So I may have misunderstood, but did I hear you say don't use the company names in your resume? Did I misunderstand?
No. What you want to do is to avoid descriptions. No, absolutely you have to have the company names on there as your employer. But a lot of people they'll have the company name, their title, and then the next part is called the job scope, a little summary of what your responsibilities were. But a lot of people above that will put a description like IBM, I work for IBM, multi-million-dollar manufacturer. But you don't need to put that on there. That's the free advertising.
Thank you.
One thing that I had suggested in the past is to talk about how the company grew from when I joined to when I left. And like I was with WebEx, for example, and when I started there, it was a $250, $300 million company. It became $1 billion company in the time I was there. Not that I was responsible for that, but what it does illustrate is that I've been a part of a fast-growing company, right? But if I'm hearing you correct, is like people know that, right?
Well, I would, in that particular instance, I would want you to convey that within the context of what you did. Okay. So if you moved with a company, so if you started out as a stock clerk and you moved through as the company grew and you progressed within the company, within the time frame that you were there, absolutely you could pull in within your accomplishment statements how your job evolved as the company grew and your responsibilities were added to and you progressed as the company grew.
Either that or how the work, I'm questioning this, I guess, how the work that I did contributed to that.
Oh, absolutely.
Supported
it. That's one way you can bring it in.
Okay.
Absolutely. Any other questions? No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.